Hello, and on the gaming table today, we're taking a look at making wargaming trees. Now, I know there are a ton of videos on YouTube about how to make trees, and I've looked at a lot of them as well. But given some of the things that have gone on recently, I've not been able to get my 3D printer set up because I'm sorting out some power issues with the electricity. I thought I need another little project, and so I decided let's make some trees. Now, one of the reasons I did this is I've got a huge bag of clump foliage. I got this off Taobao. It wasn't very expensive, about $10 for this huge bag that weighs about half a kilogram. It's probably about 4 liters of clump foliage here. Normally, I just use this stuff for maybe making some little hedges or putting some little details on my bases, nothing too fancy. So this is going to last me forever for those kinds of things. And I thought, hey, why not make some trees with this stuff? So recently I had just been using the clump foliage in a couple of games just by putting huge blobs of it on my forest templates and calling it bush or trees, and there we go. But I thought, no, let's do it properly. Let's actually make some trees. So what I did is I took my clump foliage, some bamboo skewers, and some green scour pads, the type that you use for scrubbing pots, and a few metal discs, and put those together with a hot glue gun, white glue, and acrylic paint to make some trees. So here's how I did it. First up was cutting things up. So the scour pad I was cutting up into little discs or other irregular shapes, and then the skewers I was cutting up into short lengths. You can see there it's like 3, 4, 5 centimeters long, and I've just put a point on the end so that I can stab it over the top of the scour pads there. Okay. After hot gluing these sticks onto the little metal discs there, then what I would do is I would hot glue the pieces of scour pad through. I would skewer them through the middle, apply a bit of hot glue, be a little bit liberal, it doesn't really matter too much. And then there we go, there's the basic framework of a tree. So the reason I was doing it this way with the scour pads is that the scour pads are very light. These trees are not going to be top heavy, they're not going to overbalance. The scour pad here provides a stable framework for the foliage that's going to go on top. And so this is a good kind of basic way to do the tree. I mean, you could just dry brush these up or paint them up and make trees that way, but I'm going to be adding clump foliage on here. Now, the other thing is don't make these structures, these foundations, too big. Remember, when you put the clump foliage on, everything's going to grow in all directions by, say, 5 millimeters or maybe even up to 1 centimeter. So you're going to have a lot of expansion when you put the clump foliage on. It's really going to bulk things out. So these will look a lot better once we've got some clump foliage on there. The next stage is I painted them in a brown color. The reason I did this is just to give it a bit of a darker shade. If little bits of foliage have gaps or there's ways you can see through to the interior, I didn't want the interior of the tree being a lighter color or a different tone than the exterior foliage on the tree. So this is just a really quick slap of acrylic paint just to give it a darker kind of centerpiece to the tree structure, just in case you see through from the foliage. And the next part was applying the foliage. Now, I was doing this just with white glue, and I've got a little snippet here showing how I was doing this. So here you can see what I'm doing is giving it a reasonably liberal dose of white glue, and then just applying the foliage in small clumps. I found for the way I like to do it, in small clumps works better for me. I can put little pieces on. I'm not worrying about like a big mat of this stuff and trying to shape it around. I just found using little pieces worked better for me like this. Okay. I also didn't douse the entire structure in glue to start with because the glue would run and it would drip if I used too much. And so here I'm just doing little sections at a time, putting on some foliage and then adding a bit more glue when I need, pressing things in, as you can see, and just getting the basic structure built up. It takes a little bit for the glue to adhere to the foliage and the scour pad, but it doesn't take too long, a couple of minutes, and you can get most of the foliage on a tree. Okay, a little bit of pressing, a little bit of prodding little pieces in here and there, and you can get the basic shape of the tree. And it doesn't have to be perfect. Once things have dried, you can always go back and patch things up a bit. But what I would look for is just holes like this one, where I can just add a dollop of glue, put another piece in just to fill the hole, just to help maintain the structure, a little bit on the top here as well, just to make sure all of those basic holes are covered and I've got the basic shape of my tree. And there we go. Okay, doesn't look too bad at the moment, but it needs to dry. And so this is the basic sort of situation we have. Once that tree's dried, it's not looking too bad around there, although it still needs a little bit more work. So for the next stage, it was really sealing this up and making it firmer. The foliage is quite spongy and quite like malleable, so I needed to stiffen it up. And so for that, I was using a mixture of 30% PVA with water and then dribbling it on with this dropper bottle here. The reason I was using a dropper bottle and not a spray is because I'm doing all of this indoors and I don't want to make a big mess with overspray. So here I'm just dropping little drops on and they will soak in and help to solidify that when they dry. You can see here it's starting to soak in, but it's going to take quite a while for that to dry. It takes, maybe 12 hours for the PVA to dry. And then if you really want it, I found the longer you leave it, the stiffer it gets. And you're going to need more than one coat. I tend to do about 2 or 3 coats here. And here you can see 4 or 5 drops. I'm giving these trees 20, 30, 40 drops sometimes, just to make sure they're not completely soaked in PVA, but there is going to be PVA getting into all pieces of it. Okay, and then when that's done, you can see that they're quite firm, right? I'm not pushing too hard here, but you can see there's a lot of kind of firmness and a bit of give there. So if I'm picking them up and moving them around, they're going to be reasonably sturdy. They're not going to be bulletproof, but they're going to do the job. And here they are next to some ogres I painted up recently. So they don't look too bad. Up close, they're a little bit shiny in these pictures with the light on them. From a little bit more of a distance, they look good. And here you can see a little bit of a forest I built on a Saturday morning, going through. I've made about 25 here, I think it is. Different shapes and sizes. You can see some big ones, some small ones, some that are a bit taller. So there you go. That's how I was making trees for my gaming table. So I hope you found this interesting, maybe a little bit of a different way to do this. And if you like it, leave some comments in the section below. Otherwise, I'll see you again real soon.